You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You could win Christmas on us this year. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co.
A defeat does not mean we are defeated.
Not really sure what defeat means then, but anyway, that was Biden speaking out today. So let me ask you, why do you think Kamala Harris lost so badly? And a massive European meeting today where Keir Starmer signed a deal with the Falklands to help smash the gangs. Is this it then? Do we have the answer? Or not? And something that's been neglected because of all the Trump stuff is Kemi's cabinet. Is this it? Is this the one that will beat the Labour Party? And what do you think to this? Should Prince Harry's immigration application be made public? Of course, this relates to allegations of previous drug taking. Some want President Trump to kick him out of the country. Your thoughts? What a world we live in, ladies and gents. Look, keeping me company till 7, Michelle Donnellan, the former Conservative Minister, and Bill Rammell, the former Labour Minister. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live for the 6 o'clock news.
Good evening, it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Sophia Hill with your latest headlines in the GB newsroom. The top story this evening, President Joe Biden has told Americans to accept the choice Americans made and bring down the temperature following Vice President Kamala Harris's defeat to Donald Trump in the US election. Speaking at the White House, the president says the US electoral system is fair and can be trusted. With just 74 days until President-elect Donald Trump enters the White House, Biden reminded Americans of their responsibility to make the next weeks count.
For over 200 years, America has carried on the greatest experiment in self-government in the history of the world. And that's not hyperbole, that's a fact. We're the people. The people vote and choose their own leaders, and they do it peacefully. And we're in a democracy. The will of the people always prevails. Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. And I assured him that I'd direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition.
Back in the UK, the interest rate's being cut by 0.25%, only the second reduction in almost 4 years, with rates down from 5% to 4.75%. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says we need to make sure inflation stays close to target, so we can't cut interest rates too quickly or by too much. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said with interest rates on a downward path, the Labour government is a world away from the last Parliament.
It's welcome news for millions of homeowners and businesses that interest rates have been cut today to 4.75%. I do, though, recognise that for many people who took out mortgages a few years ago, they're still looking at higher rates because of the spike in interest rates after the Conservative mini-budget 2 years ago.
Cheshire Police say MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham. A video had emerged of him appearing to punch a man to the ground. According to the police, the 55-year-old is set to appear in Magistrates Court at a later date. The charge relates to reports of an assault on a 45-year-old man in Frodsham, which was reported to the police on the 26th of October. Mike Amesbury has said he's continuing to cooperate with the police after being summoned to court over a deeply regrettable incident. And Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations today to target people smuggling gangs in Hungary at the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister's been holding bilateral meetings with European leaders today, including President Zelensky. Meanwhile, the summit will also address Donald Trump's win as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. The Prime Minister was once again asked on his view on their special relationship.
I had a very good meeting with President-elect Trump a few weeks ago when we had dinner together in New York, and that was very positive, very constructive, as I think you know. And obviously I had a phone call with him last night, again, very positive, very constructive. And as I've said many, many times, the special relationship between the UK and the US was forged in very difficult circumstances historically. In our joint view, it's as important today as it's ever been.
And some royal news to end. Prince William has met with volunteers at the National Sea Rescue Institute station near Cape Town as his 4-day royal tour comes to a close. The Prince of Wales is in South Africa to promote his Earthshot Environmental Prize, which held its annual awards ceremony in Cape Town on Wednesday night. The Prince of Wales will be a special guest at the Cape Town barbecue this evening to draw to a close his tour of South Africa. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sphere Hill. More in an hour.
Thank you very much for that. My name's Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, Michelle Donnellan, the former Conservative Minister, and Bill Rammell, former Labour Minister. Good evening to you. If one Michelle's not enough, you've got two of us. What a treat for you all. You know the drill on this programme. It's not just about us. It is about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email me at gbviews@gbnews.com. You can tweet or X me, or of course you can go to the website, which is gbnews.com/yoursay. And don't forget, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I need to go out, pick the kids up, grandkids, whatever, you can take us with you, because of course we are on your radio. There's no escaping us, quite frankly, and I love it. But look, shall we talk tonight? I was quite giddy last night, wasn't I? You'll be pleased to know I've calmed down a little bit tonight. Normal service has resumed when it comes to the American elections. Joe Biden, he has been speaking out to the nation. Let's have a listen to what he has to say.
Something I hope we can do, no matter who you voted for, is see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Bring down the temperature. I also hope we can lay to rest the question about the integrity of the American electoral system. It is honest, it is fair, and it is transparent.
There you go. Let's listen. Other stuff he had to say.
Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. We all get knocked down. But the measure of our character, as my dad would say, is how quickly we get back up. Remember, a defeat does not mean we are defeated.
I have got to say, I do like the American kind of response and reaction to failure. I do find it quite inspiring, I have to say. But fail they did. Mm-hmm. Why do you think Kamala Harris lost this election?
So I think ultimately people voted to be better off, which we saw in this country as well. It's been very hard with the cost of living crisis, and people felt that Trump could provide that for them. You know, what he did in his last term in office was really prioritise his economic policy on America first and making sure that American interests and American businesses were constantly at the top of his agenda, and people felt comforted that his focus was going to give them more money in their pockets and look after their families, and also that he was going to tackle issues like immigration. And what the Democrats did wrongly was they segregated people into different demographic groups, and we're looking at black women and this demographic group and that demographic group, and forgetting that as a whole, people genuinely want their families to be better off, and they want a fair country to live in, where if people come to the country and seek immigration, they do that legally.
Bill Rammell?
Yeah, I think you can overanalyse this. The biggest factor was the cost of living. I was listening to a radio programme before the election. An American couple talked about buying a frozen chicken that 2 years ago cost them $11, now costs them $20. And that's hit incumbent governments everywhere. So I think that was the biggest factor. I think immigration was a driver as well. And I think Kamala Harris's, the tone of her response on immigration was wrong. Actually, the border crossings are less now than they were 4 years ago when Trump was in power. But she projected a sense of not being concerned about tackling immigration. And I think progressive governments do that at their peril. And I also think there was I was listening on election night to Sarah Palin. Now, I disagree with her politically, but she's quite an astute political commentator. And she said part of this was a kind of rage against the machine, in a sense like the Brexit reaction. And I think for progressives, that's a difficult challenge to handle. I also think there was a lack of clarity of message from Kamala Harris. And in part, even though I'm a Joe Biden fan, he stood down very, very late, and she only had, 107 days to define herself, and it wasn't enough.
I do think it'll be interesting to see what happens to prices in America, because Donald Trump is talking tough. He's going to deport millions of people potentially that work in a lot of low-skilled jobs. That'll be interesting to see what that does with wages and therefore prices. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on that inflation front. But Michelle, let me ask you this. People are still saying today, Kamala didn't win because loads of people are racist and I mean, I shouldn't laugh because I said I wouldn't laugh today. Yeah. I'm taking it all seriously again. But and that she's a woman and that people just can't bring themselves to elect somebody like that. What do you think to that?
I think people need to wake up and smell the coffee. Donald Trump was extremely popular. He won this election, hands down, because people proactively voted for him because they believed that he was the better choice for their country. And denying that and blaming this or blaming that or casting aspersions on those people's characters is wrong. And we've seen that from commentators in this country as well, like looking to impose almost their will on the American public when actually, democracy has spoken. Trump has won.
Did anyone see the front page of the Mirror today? I thought that was appalling. Yeah. So you've got a British newspaper basically saying, like, what have they done? Again, basically, like, the shame of it. And I thought, who do you think you are?
Yeah, I think the tone of that's wrong. Look, I bow to nobody in my criticism of Trump. I think the man's a monster, and I think he's going to be disastrous for America and the international community. But you have to accept...
Do you think that's a bit ridiculous, Bill?
No, I don't. I think he's a real danger.
How is he a monster?
Legal cases against him, refusing to accept the result of the last American presidential election and inciting people to erupt in violent protest in Washington, not upholding the Constitution of the United States. I could go on, but you have
A lot of people, including him, by the way, would disagree with an awful lot of what you've just said. But anyway, go on.
Well, I think what happened in Washington 4 years ago was fact in January the 7th. But you have to accept that he has won. And actually, it was always on the cards that he would win, but not this emphatically. The polls were wrong. He's not only won the Electoral College, he's won the popular vote. And I think there needs to be a lot of soul-searching within the Democrats about why he did that and why they didn't present a better challenge to him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this whole notion of, like, people thinking that he's a monster, and we had people on here the other day debating about democracy in this post-next term. People were saying, people like Oprah Winfrey, for example, the final rally, Oprah Winfrey saying, vote, go out and vote because it might be the last time you ever get the opportunity to vote. And I'm laughing because I just find it so absurd.
But she's just repeating what Trump said. Trump Trump said at a rally, this could be the last time you get to vote. Now, you know, I think partly that's his scattergun approach in his use of language, but, you know, he has represented a real threat to democracy. He emphatically did that 4 years ago, but we have to accept that he has won. And, you know, we've got to work internationally. We've got to work with him and build bridges.
What I found interesting about people that don't like Donald Trump is when it suits them, they will say that Donald Trump speaks a load of nonsense and all this and that. And then when it also suits them, they will literally hang on his every single word. They're like some of the most ludicrous things that he says, which nobody would think that he actually means in all seriousness. But yet they're held onto and quoted as kind of definitely this is what he said and therefore it's going to happen. I do find it a bit ridiculous if I am entirely honest.
It's realpolitik, you know. You have to accept that he's won. He's the President of the United States. In UK terms, the US is our biggest international strategic partner. We've got to work with him.
Well, you say we've got to work with him. The conversation is who should work with him, because Nigel Farage, obviously, he's offered himself up as some kind of go-between. Starmer, etc., pretty much say no, thank you. But do you think they should take Nigel up on that?
Well, I read his article that he wrote today. It was a good article. It had some good points about the relationship that we need to forge to continue to build on the special relationship. But the reality is we shouldn't be having Farage do this role. The government needs to actually govern and get on with it. And Keir Starmer and his Foreign Secretary somehow need to manage the difficulties that they've got themselves into. They have botched up that relationship slightly. They have tainted our image on the international stage. They need to undo that, repair that. And they can't be relying on somebody from another political party. You know, this government has to get on and govern.
One thing that I do find very odd, because obviously Labour is saying that they're not going to embrace Nigel Farage. I found it really weird looking at people like Keir Starmer today posted this picture of himself looking at a telephone, saying that he'd had this telephone conversation with Keir Starmer. You've got Angela Rayner tweeting out saying that she's had this telephone call with JD Vance and all the rest of it. So it's like they're really trying to, I don't know if they're trying to convince themselves or everybody else that they've got this great relationship with Trump et al. What do you think to that?
You've got to work at the relationship. And look, you know, yes, Labour cabinet ministers have said disparaging things about Donald Trump. No worse than the Vice President-elect, JD Vance, has said about Donald Trump, where he actually said he was a neo-Nazi and he was like Richard Nixon. So, you know, you've got to put that behind you. You've got to work with the incoming Trump administration. But in terms of Nigel Farage, no, we most certainly should not appoint him as some kind of emissary to the US. Well, why not? Because Nigel's interested in Nigel. He doesn't represent the government. He doesn't represent the UK government's foreign policy. And frankly, you couldn't trust him. He would be using it for his own advantage. You know, we've got a whole diplomatic corps. We've got a foreign secretary. We've got a prime minister. It's through them that we build the relationship with the administration.
Is that fair enough? Are you sitting at home thinking, no, you should get Nigel involved? Or do you think that this case has been presented well and he shouldn't be anywhere near it? Get in touch and let me know your thoughts. There's been a big meeting today, including the EU and much broader, looking at things like how do we respond then to the administration of Donald Trump. We've had new sanctions put onto Russia in anticipation of some of the things that Trump may or may not be doing when it comes to Ukraine. Let's look at all of that after the break.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
A Tesco store on a Scottish island has defied locals by ignoring pleas to stay closed on Sundays.
Tesco's has said that no member of staff in Stornoway would be forced to work on a Sunday and that it had received a significant amount of positive reaction to its plans.
Well, let's talk now to the Minister of the Reformed Presbyterian Church, Reverend Kenneth Stewart. Good morning to you, Reverend Stewart. You're trying to keep Sunday special, and if Tesco are going to open up, that means it won't be quite as special for you.
Well, yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yes, Tesco, for some reason, they claim it's not economic advantage, but for some reason they've decided to go against hundreds of years of tradition on this island and the deeply held religious convictions of many, many people, including, of course, their own customers who are really grieved by this decision. We come obviously from the standpoint that a day of rest is effectively mandatory. It's a human right, along with the other 10 commandments which have undergirded our moral and legal fabric in society. It actually enshrines the human right to a day of rest. And of course, in the UK, that's been eroded for many, many years. Incidentally, it's still far more respected on the continent. But for us here, the Sabbath or the day of rest has been very, very important. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. And for some reason, Tesco have decided just to go against that.
And Reverend Stewart, we were actually talking about this earlier, how in European countries, I mean, even in France, which is a secular country, still very few shops will open on a Sunday.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello everybody, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Michelle Donnellan and Bill Rammell remain alongside me. I can tell you're quite divided on that last conversation at home about whether or not Nigel Farage is the man to kind of act as the go-between between Trump and the Labour Party. Lots of you, I mean lots of you, are getting in touch and saying, yes, absolutely, he should be. Simon, though, he's been in touch and said, absolutely not. Nigel Farage needs to focus all of his attention on building the Reform Party for the next election. We need him, says Simon, to be our next Prime Minister. Well, there you go. So David Lammy, then, let's touch on this because we started the conversation before the break. Downing Street now have essentially, Michelle, said that he is going to be the Foreign Secretary essentially to the end. What do you think to that?
So this is really bizarre. I can't remember a time when a government has ever done this and committed to an appointment for the entirety of a term. Events happen, scandals happen. It's very odd for a Prime Minister to wed himself to one individual, especially when that individual has been so outspoken about so many different things within his now brief. And let's face it, the role of a Foreign Secretary should be to be the UK's biggest diplomat. They should be able to talk to our friends and our enemies and be able to broker deals and be a big ambassador for our country. It is quite impossible to do that credibly and effectively if you've been slagging them off for many years. And Trump, I take your point about many people have said things about Trump, but many people are not the Foreign Secretary, and this Foreign Secretary said that he would actually protest if he came. That's quite extreme.
But then Bill would say, and you just said it just before the break, that J.D. Vance, he's also said quite a lot of stuff, called him morally repugnant. He said he wondered whether or not he was America's Hitler and so on and so forth. And now we know where he is. So obviously Trump can move on.
Well, Trump has a reputation for having a long memory, doesn't it? But that's Trump's decision. This is our decision, and it reflects on our ability to then interact with the country that's meant to be our closest ally.
I think the criticisms of David Lammy are confected. I do think the commitment from Keir to make him Foreign Secretary at the end of the Parliament is unusual. I accept that, Michelle, and I think it's a bit of cat-handed news management, and I will be honest, I think our news management as a government has not been great since the general election. But, there's a whole host of politicians. William Hague, I read last week, making trenchant criticisms of Donald Trump. Trump has been such a divisive figure, both domestically in the States and internationally.
No, but Michelle's point, that all those people are fascinating, but they're not the people that need to be brokering deals and negotiating and working with him, are they?
Yeah, but if David Lammy was still still saying those things, then you'd have a real problem.
So
But
do you think it's
Very
changed?
recently, though.
Do you think it's changed? So do you think he's gone from basically thinking he's like some kind of Ku Klux Klan sympathiser to suddenly, all of a sudden, thinking he's a decent guy?
No, look, I speak as a former Foreign Office Minister, and you have to work with people internationally, even if you fundamentally disagree with them. And that's what David Lammy is doing. He's also, because he's got significant links in the United States, he's worked incredibly hard to open doors with the incoming Trump administration and to build bridges. He's worked, for example, at a relationship with J.D. Vance, which is in our national interest.
If we park all that for a minute and we just look at the fact that they have said his appointment will be for the entirety of this Parliament, to me that's quite politically naive, and that speaks volumes for the number 10 operation. Because why are they wedding themselves to one individual in perpetuity? They don't know what that person's going to do. They might want to configure differently, etc. It's just not how you go about creating an agile and effective government.
Well, it's a bit like public organisations having a no redundancy policy until they make redundancies. It's a commitment made. Circumstances may change, but I think Keir has got confidence in David Lammy. I think he's a good Foreign Secretary, and it's part of his job to build working relationships internationally, and that's what I think he's trying to do.
One of the criticisms that gets levelled at our government is that it's a little bit student politicky. So, like, when you had the Transport Minister going out and telling people to boycott P&O and all the rest of it, and some of the things that's gone on, people would say it's like you're in the union, the student union. It's not like you're on a proper world stage. And do you think that's what might be going on here with this Lammy thing? Making statements saying this guy is definitely going to be the guy throughout the next half century. I mean, that is just a bit naive.
I've said there's some mishandling, I think.
I know, but what's it about? Let's get to the nitty-gritty. What's going on?
Well, I think it's about it's a new regime, it's a new government, and the news management operation is settling down. But, in terms of politicians making significant criticisms of Donald Trump, that has happened across the political spectrum. But when you're in government, you have to work with whoever is the President of the United States, and I have absolute confidence that that's what David Lammy and Keir Starmer will do.
But that doesn't really wash with me, and it doesn't really wash with a lot of people at home. When you say some of these things that are going on, it's just about, a new operation, settling in. I mean, it's not difficult. I've never been in government in my life, but even I would know, many of my viewers would know, some of the things that are going on, some of the statements that have been made, you just don't do that.
But it's not been made since the general election, Michelle. The statements that are associated with David Lammy were several years ago.
We're on about the statement now that this guy is the man for the next half decade. It's naive, it's silly.
Well, you said it's not difficult. I think it is difficult when, any government is managing the news agenda and everything that comes at it every single day of the week. I acknowledge that news management from the new government has not been brilliant over the last 4 months. They've now got a new structure, they've got new people in place, and I think they need to get better at it.
Well, time will tell whether or not they will. Do you think it's as simple as that? Just a bit of new entry naivety? Get in touch and tell me. But look, let's look at this European summit that took place today. Lots going on there. Deals being signed when it comes to trying to stop the birds. Lots to discuss. I'll see you in 2.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It stays gloomy for most of us over the next 24 hours. Very little change. A lot of low cloud mist, fog, some drizzle, but also some cloud breaks. We've seen those across West Wales, North Devon, northern Scotland, northern England during the day, and they'll continue in a number of these locations overnight, most especially northern Scotland. And where we do see these clear spells, temperatures will fall away, so you wouldn't rule out a touch of frost. A few fog patches, say, for the Highland Glens. But otherwise, we keep the cloud cover and we keep the mild air. 8 to 12 Celsius first thing, but it is a grey start for most of us with that extensive low cloud covering the hills in the west and giving some outbreaks of drizzle, particularly for the Outer Hebrides. Some more persistent rain here, a fresh breeze. Northern Scotland, though, the mainland at least, seeing plenty of blue skies first thing. Come further south into the Highlands and Grampians, covered by cloud, a lot of hill fog. Northern Ireland, some drizzle first thing. Likewise for Wales and the southwest. Generally dry for central and southeastern England, but overcast skies remaining. and very little change through the day. So the weather you start the day with is likely to be the kind of weather you end the day with. The drizzle will come and go in the west, but it's likely to be a bit more persistent in some places compared with recent days. There are outbreaks of rain gathering to the west to arrive in for the weekend. Brightest skies, like I say, northern Scotland. Highest temperatures here, mid-teens, otherwise a little bit cooler compared with Thursday. Now, Saturday begins with cloudy skies for most of us. We'll see a bit more rain arriving into the west, and during Saturday and into Sunday, we'll see these bands of rain move through, but on the positive side, they will clear the air so that by the start of next week, we'll see much more sunshine.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays to the west of Glasgow on the M8. One lane's closed westbound over the Kingston Bridge. There's been a multi-vehicle collision, not being helped by the roadworks just up the road from there at the Woodside Viaducts. Of course, the M18 in South Yorkshire is blocked northbound from the M1 up to Junction 1 at Bramley following an accident, and the A1M in South Yorkshire is very slow southbound towards Doncaster following an earlier crash. Queues back to the M18. The western stretch of the M25 down to one lane clockwise just north the M40. They're recovering a car that's overturned, causing long queues back to the Staines bypass. In East London at Chingford Mount Road closed following an accident, and finally in Hampshire, the M3 is blocked southbound from junction 10 to 11 south of Winchester following an accident causing queues back up the A34 past junction 9. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Michelle Donnellan, the former Conservative Minister, and Bill Rammell, the former Labour Minister. Derek has been in touch saying when the government has come out and said that David Lammy will be the Foreign Secretary for the whole duration, Derek reckons it's quite similar to football clubs when they come out saying that they've got full confidence in their manager, and you blink and then the manager's out of the door. You're a harsh man, Derek. Time will tell what happens with that one. But look, there's a big summit taking place today in Budapest. It's the European Community Summit. This was established a couple of years ago now off the back of the situation with Ukraine and Russia. So it's not the first one. Lots of conversation taking place today. I mean, there's so many strands to pull. Starmer has done a deal now with some countries about trying to stop the boats. Let's pick on that strand first. Do you think this takes us a step closer to resolution with that?
So I think it's good that he's building on the success that we achieved with the deal with Albania, but I think Albania helped the situation. It didn't cure the problem, and neither will this. And it does feel to me a little bit like Labour and Keir dipping in and out of this issue. You know, now and again they will pull at it and they'll say, oh, we've done this, but they're not really giving it their full attention. And it's the biggest issue that is dominating the entire country.
They have been doing stuff on this. They've announced an extra 75 million.
But it shouldn't be a week. It should be permanently. This is the top of the agenda. This is what they're talking about. This is their relentless plan. Because it was the key message in the election. This is the thing that we have to actually crack now, and these deals will help, but like I say, there's still not the deterrent in place to actually prevent and to smash the gangs, as he said himself.
So this is some of the Balkans he's signed this deal with. Are you confident in it, Bill?
Yeah, it's part of the solution. I mean, Michelle says we should be doing this every week. You know, the last government did it every week, and that went well, didn't it? Because it didn't actually have an impact. You need a multifaceted approach. Part of that is cooperation with European nations and those on the border of Europe. The Balkans, 100,000 illegal migrants come through the Balkans to the UK. Judicial, police and other cooperation with them, getting them on side in helping us to tackle the problem can contribute significantly. I also think...
Why would these states do this? So if you're whoever it is, as you say, from the Balkans, and you've got these 100,000 people passing through, without being disrespectful, if they pass through and they're gone, then they're not their problem anymore. So what is in these states' interest to help us with this situation?
Diplomatic leverage and money. And there'll be money associated with this deal to encourage them to work with us. And they have a vested interest as well in stopping illegal criminals transiting their country. But we talked about communication before the break. I also think the government is making progress. For example, deportations are up 23% since this government came to power. We're not very good at consistently getting those messages across.
Yeah, but crossings are 17% up on this time where they were last year, 31,000 people this year so far. Do you think the government is doing enough to address the pull factors, i.e. why on earth so many people are choosing the destination of the UK?
The biggest pull factor is people being able to come here, make an asylum claim, not having it dealt with for years, and knowing that they can work in the black economy. A key part of the government's agenda is to significantly speed up the processing of claims so you reduce that pull factor.
I know, but people will be shouting at the screens, Bill. I can hear you at home, don't worry. They'll be saying, yes, fair play, you're going to speed up the processing, but the way you're going to speed up the processing is to increase the approval rate.
No, I mean, you know, I've just said 23% increase in deportations since the general election. Look, illegal migration is a challenge right the way across the advanced world. If you look at the evidence, you only consistently achieve progress by pulling all the levers at your disposal. And I have no doubt that illegal migration will be down significantly by the time of the next general election, and net migration will be down significantly.
What do you call significantly?
It reached almost 700,000 under the Tories. If you look at the budget last week, factored in for the next couple of years is 350,000. So that's half the level we had under the Tories, and I think it will go lower than that.
But the reality is we are seen as a soft touch by many of these people that are trying to exploit our system to come and stay here. And nothing that Keir has done to date will change that. And so the pull factors that Michelle mentions are still there. And we're not actually having a big, strong deterrent or making people think, actually, if I try this, it's not going to work. And that's why we need seismic change. We need a relentless focus on this topic. But I don't think that the Labour Party get how much people care about this issue and how passionate they are about actually getting this done.
Some of these pull factors emerged under your guys'
and I'm not saying that we did a great job on this.
Hotels for people is out and out a pull factor for people, and that was very much under your guys' watches. Again, new hotels reopening on your guys' watch. When you tell the electorate we're going to be closing these hotels, we won't be using them, and then within 5 minutes we're opening new ones for them.
Well, so, I mean, to be fair, we had reversed that. We'd been closing them and doing away with using them, and Labour have now reintroduced them. And the targets...
Well, you hit the spending figures.
No, and the targets that Labour have come out with in terms of processing are unworkable. So what we're going to end up with is that they're going to approve a lot more of these people. It's the only way that they can hit those figures. But I'm not saying that the Conservative government got this right. If we'd have got this right, we wouldn't have seen a landslide victory for the Labour Party in the last election, which was predominantly because people were genuinely angry about this issue.
But you know what, Michelle, I agree with you that your approach needs to be relentless, but that's not PR, that's not spin, that's the hard graft in government. The last Labour government, between 2005 and 2010, cut asylum numbers by 50%. I was a Foreign Office Minister at the time, and I met with my Home Office counterpart every week with officials working at how we drove the numbers down. That's the relentless approach you need, not stunts, not PR.
I'm not saying we need stunts, but we need results.
Absolutely.
And so far there's been a lot of rhetoric and not actually much results, because we're seeing more boats coming.
Well, actually, the first half of the year when your party was in power, the numbers went through the roof. They're still too high, but
they went through the roof this summer as well, didn't they?
Yeah, but they not the rate of increase we saw under the last Tory government for the first 6 months. And the real test of whether what Labour is doing about the small boats will come next spring, because everybody knows the numbers will go down over the winter. If we're having impact, as I believe we will, you'll see that from next spring the numbers start to reduce significantly.
You say that you're just saying that in terms of the administration reducing some of the asylum crossings and stuff, but many people again will be shouting at their screens, Bill, saying, but hold on a second, because the Labour administration got us involved in many foreign conflicts that now we are getting the, I don't want to say we're reaping the rewards of that because it's the wrong term, but you see what I mean, we're getting the effects of that now. We're seeing so many people coming across from conflicts that many people would argue we should never have even been involved in the first place, that has then gone on to create some of that lack of stability and all the reasons that people will cite when they're trying to get out of their countries.
Well, look, we could spend forever debating Afghanistan and Iraq. I still think they were the right things to do. But actually, there was almost universal cross-party agreement on that. The Tories voted with us on the conflict in Afghanistan and the conflict in Iraq.
Yeah, my point is that what we're seeing now, so many people leaving their countries, is a byproduct, isn't it? It's a consequence of some of those decisions.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Let me take Afghanistan as an example. You know, the Taliban were training terrorists in training camps that were targeting this country. I think it was in our national interest to do something about that, and that's why we went into Afghanistan. Yes, there are consequences from that, and you have to manage them.
Yeah, but when it comes to illegal immigration, the vast majority of them are actually coming from what we would deem safe countries, and that's the problem, that they are economic migrants who are seeing the UK as a soft touch and thinking that they can forge a better life here and not going through the correct channels and trying to cheat the system.
Paul, one of my viewers, he's got in touch and said, Michelle, in my view, both Labour and the Tories are as bad as each other. He says, the bottom line, that we will never stop these Burke crossings. He doesn't think either of you, as parties, will. He thinks that the only party that will fix that will be the Reform Party. So I've got to say there's not a lot of optimism coming through. One of the other things that's been happening recently as well is, of course, you've seen Donald Trump. He's been talking quite tough when it comes to the conflict, the war in Ukraine, saying that essentially he's going to stop it on day one. We, as a country, have now increased the sanctions that we've put on Russia. Do you think that's the right move, Michelle?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the people involved that we've increased the sanctions on was an organiser or an orchestrator of the incident in Salisbury, which was very close to my former constituency in Wiltshire. And I saw firsthand the economic impact that had. Salisbury almost became a desert, and the local businesses really suffered because people were too afraid to visit, to shop there, etc. And so this is about the economic impact on our country and how it's impacted us, as well as what's happening overseas and what's the moral and right thing to do. And when it comes to this topic, I think we should be using every tool in our toolbox.
Do you think Trump is going to be a force for good when it comes to ending this conflict?
Yeah, so a lot of people call him a warmonger, but when you look at his record, he is stronger on ending wars than starting them, actually. And he himself has said that. He's claimed that he can stop this within a day. Zelensky said to him, well, what's the plan? Show us the plan. I'd like to stop this in a day, as long as it's not us giving over our sovereignty, etc. And I don't think he's actually stipulated that. But I don't think he would expect Ukraine to capitulate and to concede everything. So let's see what will happen. The proof will be in the pudding as to what can come out of this and what can be resolved.
Look, I know we had some ding-dong about Donald Trump earlier, but these are the realities and these are the risks coming from a Trump presidency. You know, solving the Ukraine crisis within a day, the only way you can do that is complete capitulation to Putin and, you know, it'll be Munich 1938 all over again. We've got to use... I mean, Europe needs to be united in its view on Ukraine towards the United States, and then we've got to use all our diplomatic leverage to try and persuade him not to abandon Ukraine. And in part, that means Europe needs to spend more on defence. But I also think the diplomacy and the political leverage, you know, you could actually argue that what really killed Joe Biden's presidency was the precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Trump needs to be persuaded that, you know, that's the risk you face if you leave this country, a defenceless country, in the lurch.
Yeah, but I think we should be fair and not make assertions as to what that plan would look like. And I'm sure that when he was saying one day he was speaking, you know, tongue-in-cheek, yeah, he wouldn't have it meant an actual calendar day. I wouldn't have expected. But what he was saying was that it doesn't necessarily mean to need to take years or months to progress a kind of deal. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and let's see what happens here. But I think that our support of Ukraine has been right throughout this, and we should absolutely continue to defend the Ukraine's right to freedom and to sovereignty. They're what we believe in as a country, and we should defend our allies.
Absolutely.
Is that fair? I mean, meanwhile, of course, in the UK, we're completely skint, apparently. And pensioners can't afford to heat themselves at their homes this winter, but apparently we've got £3 billion every year for as long as whatever it takes, courtesy of the Labour Party now. Many people just don't understand how we've got all this money for all these foreign conflicts, but we don't seem to have enough money for domestic priorities here.
Because it's in our self-interest. You know, if Putin is allowed to win in Ukraine, he'll then turn on Estonia, he'll turn turn on other countries, that will have a massive impact on our economy. So it's not altruism, it's actually about self-interest.
Do you think there's enough checks and balances as to where and how this money is spent?
Yeah, there's constant scrutiny. So one example of that, the particular missiles that Zelensky wants to use against the Russian mainland. There's been an ongoing debate between the UK, the French and the United States about how and in what way the Ukrainians can use that. So, yes, I do think there's scrutiny over it.
Do you agree with that at home? Look, we will speak about Prince Harry as well before the end of the programme. Many people saying that his immigration paperwork should be made public and suggesting that as a result, Donald Trump might want to kick him out of America. What do you make to that also, Kemi's cabinet? Is it a winner for you or not? See you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recruiters are warning that if you're not tech savvy, you could be missing out with your CV failing to make it through an AI-powered sifting process. So we've gone from sort of computer says no HR people ticking boxes to AI, right? Is that right?
Yes, well, this applies once you're in the job as well, as a recent report revealed that employees expect AI will manage an average of a third of their tasks within the next 12 months. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Cosmo Curry, founder of Van Kuysen, a leading company in technology recruitment.
Morning, Cosmo.
Morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Van.
Well, yeah, thank you for joining us. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because AI is, of course, on the rise and now in the workplace and in universities and things. Another article came to mind. There was a student recently, I think it was in the news just the other day, that got in trouble for using AI. So there's, you know, for exam purposes and essays. So there's lots of different ways that it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But you're, of course, here to talk about the ways in which AI is a good thing within the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, AI is here to stay, for sure. And we're seeing this rise of people using it in such a clever format. And the other side of it is also we're seeing people who are using it and during the process of that, they are losing their character. We're losing the actual insight into the individual behind that. And so we've kind of got this kind of mix. And I think AI is phenomenal when you're looking at it from a point of view of optimization, point of view of speed, getting results. But I think we have to remember that, you know, the fundamental of recruitment is people. And we cannot substitute the people, the personal aspect, by replacing that with AI.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. So alongside me, I've got Bill Rammell and Michelle Donlan remains. Look, let's talk, shall we, about Kemi Badenoch, the shadow cabinet. It's not really got much attention, I have to say. It's been dwarfed by the likes of Donald Trump. You know, you're a Conservative. Are you impressed with the cabinet she's created? A lot of people, for example, looking at the fact that there's no role for Suella Braverman, pointing that out, questioning why. Do you think it's a strong cabinet, the best cabinet that could have been created?
I think it is a strong cabinet and it pulls people from all wings of the party. So if you look, you've got people like Vicky Atkins and Ed Agar, who are traditionally more on the left of the party in One Nation. You've got people like Priti Patel and Mel Stride, who stood in the leadership contest. You've got people from the right. You've also got Jenrick in there as well. You've got people that have got the experience of having been ministers, but also some fresh blood too. So I think it is a formidable team to take the fight to Labour, but also to try, crucially, and get some of those votes and supporters back from reform.
So it's a yes from you. Is it a strong... Do you quake in your boots when you see this shadow cabinet thinking, goodness me, she's created something that's really going to give us a kicking at the next election?
Honestly, not. But let me make another point. I actually think the timing of the outcome of the leadership election for the Tories is bizarre. One of the things you need when you're in opposition is airtime. And announcing the result 3 days before the US presidential election, where you were absolutely... undoubtedly going to get no coverage because you're going to be blown away by the US presidential election, to me was a bizarre decision and not in the Tory party's best interests. I also think there's a real question about this shadow cabinet in terms of who's not in it. I mean, one example, James Cleverly, who actually stood for the leadership, and yet he's choosing not to serve. And there are others like that. This is certainly not the kind of start that I think Kemi Badenoch needed. And one of the bizarre things I found out today, the first shadow cabinet meeting had a presentation from Ian Duncan Smith on how to succeed in opposition from the former Tory party leader who was sacked after 2 years. You couldn't make this up.
But that's about learning lessons, isn't it? And hearing from people that might have made mistakes and learn from them. But in terms of James Cleverly and others choosing not to stand, that's not unusual. We see that often being the case when people are not successful in becoming a leader. And to be fair to James, he's done a number of the great offices of state over the years, and having some time to focus on his constituency and be a backbench MP is obviously his prerogative and his decision. And not everybody can be in that shadow cabinet, but everybody has a role to play to be a voice now for the Conservative Party and the
I know, but Bill's point is why doesn't not everyone can be in there, obviously, but Bill's point is why doesn't everyone want to be in there? Why are they all chomping at the bit to be in there?
Well, I do think that there is a primary function to being an MP, and that is looking after your constituency. And it's no bad thing to say, actually, you know, I've done several years as a minister. Now I'm going to actually spend more time having that dedication and focus to the local patch. And on the timing, well, I take your point, I do. But we faced a seismic defeat. And unless we spend the time reflecting on that, properly understanding why that was, changing and adapting and being more in touch with the general public, then we're not going to get back in power. And you have to do that by getting the right leader.
Michelle, people would have been able in the streets to have told you in an instant why you got an absolute battering at the general election. And the very fact that it takes your party months on end to look inward and navel gaze and pontificate what did we do wrong, even that in itself tells people that you don't really get it.
No, but I mean, you've got to pick the right leader. So we've had several prime ministers in our party. You know, the last thing we wanted to do was elect somebody else in a rush and get it wrong. What you want to do is make sure that the next person really is the right person to recognise that challenge.
Do you know what, Michelle? I don't buy that, because 90% of your members vote within a week of the ballot papers going out. You've then had a further 5 or 6 weeks beyond that, and your leadership election result got lost amidst everything else that was happening. So, you know...
Well, including this, by the way, I'm saying about it now. We've literally been speaking about this now because everyone has indeed been focused on Trump. So, yes, you make a very good point on the timing. But look, speaking of Trump, I do want to end with this one. Let's just listen to a conversation about Prince Harry.
No one knows the truth. What did he put on his American visa form?
If they know something about the drugs and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action.
So many people now, because Trump has obviously got that election, many people are trying to push again to get Prince Harry's immigration paperwork to be made public, of course, based on those suggestions in Harry's book. Do you think this documentation should be made public, and to what end?
So I can understand, so the Heritage Foundation have been really pushing this case. I can understand why, because it should be a fair system for everybody, no matter who they are. But I actually think Trump isn't going to do this, because he's the president-elect for the United States of America. He's got bigger fish to fry, let's face it. Picking this scab is not pragmatic, it's not sensible, and it's not going to garnish him much support back home or internationally. So whilst he might have spoken out whilst he wasn't in office and said things, he didn't actually commit to doing this, and I don't think he's going to do it.
I agree with that, and I tell you this, if the United States starts stopping issuing visas to people who took soft drugs in their youth, then they're going to be banning an awful lot of people coming from overseas. I also think there are privacy concerns. Everyone has a right to have their visa application dealt with confidentially. But I agree with you, Michelle. I don't think Trump's going to take any action on this.
One of my viewers has got in touch and said, Anne, Michelle, what are you doing? We don't want Harry back in the UK. He can stay there. Oh, I actually feel quite sorry for Harry when people, they get quite, I don't know, am I being a bit soft? I feel a bit sorry for Harry and Meghan sometimes, and I know I can hear you shouting at me at home, but...
I can empathise with that. I mean, you know, I see the tragedy at the heart of this, of still a relatively young man who's estranged from his father. And in any family, that's not a good outcome. However, Harry and Meghan have not made the best decisions in terms of some of the criticisms they've made and their PR handling of that.
Yeah, you're right. The whole thing is very sad from a family perspective. But I think this would extend the media coverage and embroilment if this kicked off again. So I think let's let them crack on.
Who's this? Terry in Birmingham. He said, Michelle, why are all these sanctions drip, drip? Why didn't we just go really hard and fast when it comes to Russia on day one? Your thoughts on that, Michelle, quickly?
So we did, but then obviously new intelligence arises and you can put more sanctions on more people. And constantly you have to keep doing that to show that you mean business as well, so that the sanctions have teeth and that you're not just one-hit wonders, in effect.
Got to say, there's not a lot of support for this kind of Europe meeting today, especially when you're mentioning more money going into some of these agreements. Leslie says, Michelle, none of this will make any difference whatsoever. She says you can throw all the money at it in the land. She doesn't think these boat crossings will stop. She doesn't think you'll ever be able to crack down on the criminal gang. She says they're gaming the system and nothing will stop them. Goodness me, Leslie, that's a bit depressing, isn't it? But look, that's all we've got time for tonight. Thanks, guys, for your time, and thank you to each and every single one of you at home. Up next, Nigel Farage. Night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It stays gloomy for most of us over the next 24 hours. Very little change. A lot of low cloud mist, fog, some drizzle, but also some cloud breaks. We've seen those across West Wales, North Devon, northern Scotland, northern England during the day, and they'll continue in a number of these locations overnight, most especially northern Scotland. And where we do see these clear spells, temperatures will fall away, so you wouldn't rule out a touch of frost. A few fog patches, say, for the Highland Glens, but otherwise we keep the cloud cover and we keep the mild air. 8 to 12 Celsius first thing, but it is a grey start for most of us with that extensive low cloud covering the hills in the west and giving some outbreaks of drizzle, particularly for the Outer Hebrides. Some more persistent rain here, a fresh breeze. Northern Scotland, though, the mainland at least, seeing plenty of blue skies first thing. Come further south into the Highlands and Grampians, covered by cloud, a lot of hill fog. Northern Ireland, some drizzle first thing. Likewise for Wales and the southwest. Generally dry for central and southeastern England, but overcast skies remaining and very little change through the day. So the weather you start the day with is likely to be the kind of weather you end the day with. The drizzle will come and go in the west, but it's likely to be a bit more persistent in some places compared with recent days. There are outbreaks of rain gathering to the west to arrive in for the weekend. Brightest skies, like I say, northern Scotland, highest temperatures here, mid-teens, otherwise a little bit cooler compared with Thursday. Now, Saturday begins with cloudy skies for most of us, and we'll see a bit more rain arriving into the west. And during Saturday and into Sunday, we'll see these bands of rain move through, but on the positive side, they will clear the air so that by the start of next week, we'll see much more sunshine.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems to the east of Swansea. The westbound carriageway of the M4 is currently blocked from junction 41 at Backlin to 42 at the Britain Ferry Bridge at the scene of an accident. Meanwhile, on the M1 in Hertfordshire, the two outside lanes are closed northbound just after junction 8. The Hemel Hempstead turn off at the scene of an accident. Queues back to the M25. The M25 still struggling on the western stretch after a car overturned on the clockwise carriageway earlier on north of the M40. All lanes are back open, but it's queuing back to the M4. East London at Chingford Mount Road closed following an accident off Normanshire Drive. And in south west London, Garrett Lane, the A217 closed at Earlsfield just south of Wandsworth following a collision between Burntwood Lane and Waldron Road. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's